Anyway.
Hello again. Welcome to No Matter. We've just come
Hi.
into this from a very... In between these podcasts, when we record these, we have conversations,
Podcast
obviously.
conversations.
And oh my gosh, we get riled up. So I'm sure at some point we'll talk about what we just talked about. But for now, welcome to today.
Hello.
And actually today we want to talk because we were having a conversation with a friend a couple of days ago. And we were kind of talking about things like empty nesting. And just when big transitions happen and you kind of, you know, you have this thing that you put all of your energy into, like, or maybe it's kids, maybe it's whatever. And I experienced this, and it wasn't kids, it was something else for me. But that you hit this moment where you kind of look around and you're like, oh, I don't know who I am. Like, I don't know who I am anymore. Like, something has changed. Maybe, you know, maybe you lost a job, or maybe you had kids, or maybe your kids moved out, or whatever. And actually you hit this point where you're like, oh my God, I don't know who I am. And we ended up talking about this friend of ours who spent like 2-3 years purposefully trying to find things that she loved. So she made she made this entire list of all of these things that she'd never tried before. So she went swing dancing, and she tried lobster, and she did all of these things and made it this massive experiment. And, you know, if she liked it, she did it again. And if she didn't like it, she didn't do it again. And I had this massive realization, sat thinking about it, where I was like, I often will not try things out of fear because I'm not going to like them. And we ended up in this massive like loop about it in this conversation. But, you know, we really wanted to talk about what happens. And what we actually came to talking about was the fact that it's when you go from this place where you're pouring into others, constantly pouring into others. So with kids, and then you get the empty nesting, you know, you're pouring into getting your kids through school and through all of these things. And then all of a sudden they've all left and gone to uni, and you've spent all of your life pouring into them. Now what? How do you pour into yourself when you don't know how to pour into yourself? Like, how do you do that? And we were kind of having that conversation, weren't we, around pouring into yourself and whether there's a space to maybe not have to wait. Because I think the thing.
Yes. So can I just say hello? Yes. I'm Jacqueline.
Oh, I'm Lauren. So I just assume that she knows they know who we are now.
No. So I'm thinking if this is the first one that you come into, I will just say hello. Who are we? And
I'm actually sat with a coffee, and I'm just like, you all know us now.
We're relaxed. I think again though, even just saying that I'm the mother and you're the daughter in this relationship. Yeah. And the reason why I want to say that is because you've just said there about kind of not wait until you reach that point. 100%. And I know that you know, if you'd spoken to me as a mum with 4 children years ago, and I mean before my mid-30s, I would have been like, where the hell do you expect me to find the time for that? And how am I supposed to? Because everything was about what I would give. And, you know, and I just felt like there wasn't any space for me.
And that, sorry to interrupt, but that thing that happens where something that very much used to happen for me and still sometimes does is when someone goes, you've got a choice to change this, it feels like a smack in the face. Because it's like, what, you think I'm choosing this? You think I'm choosing to be stressed and tired and overwhelmed? You think I'm choosing to have 4 kids and always have to be busy? You think I'm choosing the exhaustion? And I can feel that because that's where I would go. You know, when people are like, well, you can choose how you feel. And I'm like, what do you mean you can choose how you feel? You think I'm choosing to be fucking depressed? Like, and I felt very defensive.
No.
Very defensive.
Well, can I say that the thing for me was when the doctor I'd be really poorly and I'd go to the doctors, and then it'd be like, you need to rest.
Fuck off.
And I'd be like,
when?
Does that mean that you?
Sorry, let me just put the 4 kids on fucking ice, shall I?
Put them in the cupboard.
Don't do that.
I was joking. You never got.
No, I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying that
to anybody else. Yes.
We're not recommending that you put your children in cupboards.
This was literally. I need to have the word joke come above my head when I said that. It was not that. Joke.
Just kidding.
I'm joking. I think where the conversation also came from though was the fact that potentially recognising times in our lives where we've just felt empty. Because that's the whole thing, isn't it? It's like when you give and give and give to everybody else. And I speak to a lot of people that do that. You know, we fall into this pattern.
And we're taught and we see it.
I think that's it, because that's often where it isn't a choice. It is a pattern that happens for a lot of us. And that's where somebody says to you, you can choose. You can ultimately, if you've recognised the pattern. That's the difference.
Yeah, and been shown how to
change it.
Practiced
it. Yeah, because just so you know, I am the woman that when people had said, I used to read all the time, you could choose how you feel. I used to think, oh, fuck off.
Literally.
How do I do that? And yet now I get it.
I posted about that yesterday.
Yeah, now I get it. Now I understand that I can begin to spot, the patterns that I'm in, or that maybe all patterns that I fall into, and what I can do with my body. That means that actually I can get myself out of it and I can begin to choose. And also just to point out something, because you gave us such a beautiful example of choosing when on the previous podcast, if this is the order they're going in, where we were talking about black and white thinking, and actually when you were talking about the colostrum and the fact that you chose how you wanted to feel. Yeah.
So I recognised my body was in a place of
not
stress,
a great place, and you
this
changed
was before
it.
all of this.
And one of the things, so I always remember doing just a short course with the Physical Intelligence Institute, and I utterly loved it, and I definitely want to do more. That was where you see the impact that you can have and where you can begin to make a choice. So that doesn't stop the pattern initially, this whole bit. So understanding the patterns, but being able to change it was such a powerful thing, and recognizing I have more control over it than I even realize. Because again, that comes back. Sorry, Lauren, I'm realizing.
It's all right.
It's just if you think about the circles of control, how often do we think we can control external stuff and it isn't? What we can control is our attitude, our what's going on for us, and it's giving ourselves enough of a space in between what's happening and our reaction to it that actually is the bit. And for me, what we're about to talk about today, which is pouring into yourself after what you've done is just pouring everybody else, that's why this is ever so important at any age. At any age.
So 2 things came up for me, and I can only remember one of them now, so I'm hoping the other one's going to come back by the time I finish saying this one. One is just really randomly that this doesn't have to be that you... I always think with these things, for me, this comes up as... And because when I say this, I don't mean this big-headedly. Because I'm such an intellectual, I intellectualise everything. Like, I have to... I think everything through. It's really stressful. But it means that when I started doing all of this stuff, working on, myself, the positive intelligence, starting to do self-compassion, there was so much of me that was still trying to intellectualize everything.
It's a safety
and it was still trying to talk myself around. And I don't know why I had this image of someone going on stage, like to speak, and they're feeling fear. And the intellectualized version of this and going, oh, well, you can choose how you feel, is me having a conversation with the version in my head that's afraid and go, well, you shouldn't be scared of this. It's just going on stage. And that's the intellectualized version. And actually, it can be as tiny as standing in a way that makes you feel strong. So I know we've talked before about the Nicola Sturgeon power stance, and I don't like her. That's not what this is about. But she has this wide-legged, hands on hips, stand like a strong man, stance that she does. And people take the piss out of it, but I respect the fuck out of it, because when you're about to go on stage and you're feeling really scared, actually, if you can stand like someone who's not scared, you can just tick your body over into maybe believing that you're not quite as scared as you are. And it's that, isn't it? It's that
Or trick your brain into believing you're not, because actually that's the whole point.
So if you're getting to a point and you can feel your body crushing over and you're feeling really anxious and you're all and I can hear that in me. It's like, okay, if I just sit myself up, I roll my shoulders back, I open my chest, I take a deep breath.
Yeah, because actually,
and I sit here like a big, strong
woman. Take a deep breath, because actually when we're afraid, we're not breathing deeply, or even kind of, we're very shallow, might be holding our breath like I've mentioned before. So it's all of that.
I notice it when I'm driving. I get over the wheel.
Me too.
I get close, if I'm really stressed, and I'm over, and I'm like, oh, hang on.
Come back, relax.
And I always click. There's always a in my shoulders as I pop myself back, and I'm like, oh. So it's like, I always think that the best thing about when we have these conversations is realizing that this isn't, it doesn't have to be massive, because that's exhausting. When you're already exhausted, that's what I was going to talk about with the coaching. So, you know, I think a lot of people see coaching in a specific way where it's like, what you were talking about was the fact that I can't necessarily change everything that's happening around me. All I can change is the way that I'm responding to it. And I think there's this massive thing, especially in marketing, where you have to promise stuff to people. So you know how, like, for me, a lot of my competitors are like, well, I can get you 5k months and like all that kind of stuff. And fucking amazing. Like, if you can do that, you go. You get people these amazing months. And with coaching, it's like, I can get you a new job. I can get you this. I can get, and it's like, there's a space here where I don't think people understand the power of, it's not what I can get you. It's not this specific result at the end, because not everyone's going to get this specific result anyway. No. But I can change the way you feel about no matter where you're going.
I've had many clients that have come in and they've had a specific aim, and then they've realised that maybe isn't the aim that they actually want to go for, and they achieve other things and things that feel far better for them. And it's, I think it's that, isn't it? I do think that's, and also coming back to what you were saying about, you know, I really do. I love what I do, and I think having somebody share something with you about what they're recognizing and helping and supporting them, for them to see for themselves how they can make, what are these little changes, because that's the bit, you know, we often think it's the big changes, but actually you'll read this, there are so many people out there that talk about this, James Clear and names that have now gone out of my head as soon as I said that. Everybody talks about these micro changes and these little things, tiny habits. BJ Fogg, that's who he is. And these tiny habits that really make a difference, because actually when we think about, you know, beginning to change these patterns, change can happen quickly. And I think that's the thing, it's not that change can't happen quickly, it's just that often it's the little things that happen that become consistent that begin to really change things. So you know, there's again, come back to what we talked about last time, black and white thinking. There's no, it's not either you change or you don't change. It's not either it's quick or it's fast. There's a real nuance to it, and it will depend on the person and where they're at. Here's the thing though, what you're saying there is, it doesn't have to be big things that we do for ourselves that make a difference. That, you know, the choosing me and how I wake up on a morning, you know, it's that kind of thing. I love this, because I really didn't get being intentional. You know, I'm going to choose, but being intentional is I choose how I'm going to go into the world today. I choose to, you know, to treat myself with more kindness, or I choose to be curious about things. I
posted the other day being like, I'm choosing today to be whimsical.
I love that.
I want to invite whimsy. I want to invite whimsy into my world. That's what I want. I want to be whimsical. I want to dilly-dally.
Dilly-dally.
I want to dilly-dally. I want to be a frog on a lily pad. That's how I want to exist today. And I know I've got to do work and I've got things to do, but that's what I wanted to embody. I wanted to embody this frog on a lily pad, just dilly-dallying in the sun with a little lily next to me. That's what I was embodying. But it just made me start my day like, I'm a dilly-dallyer. Like, so it meant that then, when I took a little bit longer to make my coffee, and I sat and I gave my dogs a cuddle, I was like, oh, I feel purposeful doing it. I don't feel like I'm... What often happens because I work from home, obviously we work from home, and we work in isolation a fair amount. So I will work at home on my own. And there's a version of me in my head that is a shitty manager. Like a shitty manager in a corporate job. That's like, why aren't you at your desk yet? Not going to get anything done if you don't go sit at your desk. She's cow. Proper cow. She's like, why aren't you wearing a pencil skirt? She's honestly, she's like, you can't do good work if you're in your pajamas. Fuck off, Lauren. Yes, I can. Look, I'm dilly-dallying.
She's Lorraine.
Yeah, she's she's La Ruren. La Ruren. She's not. La Ruren's different. We'll talk about La Ruren a different day. But because I was purposefully dilly-dallying, I was like, fuck you. I'm dilly-dallying on purpose. And then I had like a super creative day, and the mapping of my main event at the minute is bringing me so much joy, and like I can finally see the marrying of like the creative side and the side that's actually really, really very strategic. But the point is that strategy is boring unless there's a reason that you're doing it, you know. and that, but also the parts that I'm seeing, because I visualized yesterday. I was visualizing this very specific person that I want to work with. That's how I work with like social media and stuff and building offers, and I can see this person, and they are finding things really overwhelming, and they feel like they're constantly busy, and it's this really. And I was like, what would I genuinely want to work with them on? How would I really want to work with them? And I would really want to force them to have a day off. And I can feel myself being like, I know you don't want to do that. Because I know what that feels like when you're in that zone where you're like, no, I can't. And of course you feel like that because your income feeds you and it keeps your house running and all of those things. Of course you feel like that. But we need to break you out of this pattern of feeling like you're stretched and being pushed and in a rush. We need to break it. I'd want to make them have a day off. And I'd want to make them invite the version of themselves that laughs like a weirdo. We all have that version. We cackle, right? That version of me, what would she want to do today? So what would she want to do? And I can feel mine's like, oh, I don't know. And I can feel her. She's funny, right? So I didn't want to invite her in. Because then when we spend the day with that person, we find that spark, right? And then I can see this visualization in my head that I want to do with my clients where I get them to put this little spark in a jar, tiny little jar, and they can huff it whenever they need to for some creativity, because that's the version of them that we want to work with, right? And maybe it's a little version of them, because mine might be my 6-year-old, or maybe it's like a big I don't know who it is. And then we put it in the jacket pocket, right? So it's sat here. That's where it is. And then we get in and we do the main event, because the thing is you can't come in and work with me and have these big wild dreams and really see what you want to build if you're in a place of on the train or in the alleyway. If you're in this place of fight or flight, or this place of lack. If I don't do this, I'm going to be unsafe. If I don't do this, I'm not, like, we can't build this magical dream, which is what everyone has in this place. So we need to get you out of it and into this like sparkle first. And actually, I didn't mean to do that, but what a gorgeous place, because actually that's about pouring into yourself.
I literally was going to come back to the beginning and ask and say to you, okay, so being intentional of the dilly dallying, the whimsical. One was which version of you was allowed to do that. The other was in what way did that fill you up to allow you to do that? And something that you said there, because actually what you're inviting is playful.
Yes. And because I think as business owners we underestimate the crucialness, the crucial need for creativity. Because the thing with, and this is the thing about physics as well, right? It's because everyone's like, oh, physics, black and white. Like, actually, physics is a bit magical because the point of physics is problem solving. So I'm a really good problem solver.
You are.
You give me a problem and give me space to be creative around it, and I will figure out a way around that. And I love that. That's what I love to do. It's how I love to build. And we underestimate, I think, when we start these businesses and what happens, and we were talking about this the other day as well, where, and I think this is especially true for coaches, you come into this business and you feel like there's a way that you should work, and you have to come across as professional, and you should be putting out these certain posts, and you should have a funnel, and we should have a webinar, and we should do workshops, and we do all of this kind of should. And you end up being these like little carbon copies of these white men who made it up. Like, that's what kind of happens. But actually what happens is we lose the creative part. We lose that bit of us that's like, actually, what do I want to do? And I get that this isn't comfortable, because there's a part in me who still goes, you can't make money that way. I can hear it. And she's the panicky bit of me. She's probably the 15-year-old, and she's pretty spiky. We talked about her recently. But I also know that if I want to do this for a long time, and I want to do this for a long time, I want to hit a point where we sell this when we're old and decrepit, and or maybe other people come in and take over it, and and we bring other people in, and then we can pass it along, and because this matters. And in order to be able to do that, it needs to look like something I want it to look like. And I think as business owners especially, but I think actually everyone just underestimates how fucking important playfulness and creativity are. How do we invite them in when we're exhausted? How do we invite them in when we're in that place where our brain's going, no, but if you don't get that done, you're not going to eat. No, but if you don't get that done, you're not going to get paid. No, but if you don't get that done, you know what I mean? Like, And this pouring into yourself, what I said yesterday in the post that I shared about it was, this doesn't have to be big. It could be 5 minutes. It could be less than that.
It can, and it can be more. Again,
Yeah,
it can
it could be-
grow.
Yeah.
It's just, you reminded me of, because it's interesting for me when you were talking about it there, because I guess that's where, you know, for you, that's quite a recent thing, isn't it? In terms of the dilly-dallying and the whimsical.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's been other times in your life, other points in your life where you realise that you brought that in and you allowed the colour to come. It's funny because I feel a real link between what we were talking about before, about the difference between, you know, when we're very much in black and white and it's this or it's that, and actually, you know, I either look after myself or I don't. It's that. Whereas what you're suggesting is we bring in the shades and the colour, and the fact that actually this colour palette doesn't need to, we don't need to stay in the, you know, the, I don't need to be sunshiny all the time. It's just making me think, actually, as you're talking there, because I think about myself and it's like, you know, I love the colour yellow. I love it. And I also don't want to stay there all the time, because I love the colour green, and I love blue, and I love red, and I and I was just thinking about the link with emotions, and the link with, you know, the self-compassion, because actually when you were saying there about how do I get out of this place of fight or flight, it is coming back into my body. It's using my senses. It's, you know, being really aware of what I'm feeling, and that takes practice, getting very specific about what it is, because then I can choose what I need to do next. There's the choice thing. So it's this part of pouring into myself, and I, going back to what we talked about right at the very beginning, you know, I was thinking about, if somebody had said that to me, choose you, it's like, how did I do that? And yet I did, ultimately, because I think, you know, in my mid-30s,
I remember the shift.
Yeah, quite by accident, actually.
Where you started choosing you.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think at that point, it's funny how it starts to spiral in a great way once you start to do these little bits. For me, it was about choosing which voice in my head to listen to.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, that I'd never even thought about that connected to this. This whole pouring into me, part of it was actually recognizing that you know, this monologue, or this conversation that was happening in my head, which is more what it felt like, was other people's voices that ultimately I needed to close down. There's a really great coaching tool that I got introduced to when I did the accreditation that I did, called the cast of characters, and I've used it and I've also done it. And it's this idea that you really get a vision of all of these characters that are within you. And you can do it on different things, on a stage, on a bus, on so one of my clients did it on an aeroplane, loved it, was so brilliant. And also this whole thing, because you mentioned on one of the other podcasts about who's driving the bus, that's where you begin to realise, well, who's actually got the main character part on the stage. And for me, it wasn't me. It was not me. I realised it was, ultimately, I realised now I was giving this power to other people, but I wasn't the one that had the main character energy.
Yeah.
And that was where things started to change, because it was like, I'm going to choose not to listen to you, because suddenly I heard my own little voice go, I don't want to do any of this anymore. I just need all of this to stop. And I was like, oh.
And
that's what I want.
Someone pointed something out the other day that was like, the term main, because I use the term main character energy all the time, and they were like, some main characters are shit. Like, some main characters aren't the best people, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to be the main character. You just have to choose your character.
That's it.
And I was like, oh my gosh, what a great way to think about it. Because they were like, Frodo, Legolas. And I was like, Legolas? Fucking Samwise Gamgee, thank you very much. But do you know what I mean? Like, and it is that. It's like, oh, like you get to choose. You get to choose. One of the things we spoke about this week, because we've been talking about the cast of characters without talking about it. I think it's just because we talk about all of this stuff like it's just fucking normal for us now. Because actually we were talking about that moment for you where you realised that, you know, the voices in your head, and you were listening to the voices actually that weren't your voice. And what you said was that little voice right at the end there where you were like, I just don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, it was really quiet, but I'd never really tuned into it. And then all of a sudden, I have a bit of a story, daughter, that we have a coffee table, I'm just going to give context to how I often will have these conversations with myself. And I just remember being sat on the coffee table.
The dance floor.
The dance floor,
It's
we
really
call
big.
it, because it's big. And I've just tidied all the settees. And if you know my settees, once you've tidied them, you don't want people to
You don't
sit
sit
on
on them.
because they're feather filled and they then look rubbish. They look gorgeous when they're all plumped up. So I was sat on the coffee table, and I think it was in my dressing gown, and I just remember thinking, like, this, I could feel this fight going on in my head, like this arguing about myself, and it was about what I looked like. It was about, what was happening with me, my body, all of that kind of stuff. And I do remember, I can feel it. Like, I'm sat there, and all of a sudden I can literally see these characters, like, and they're not me, but they are me in some ways, because I'm bringing them into my head. And then this little voice just goes, I just want to stop. And it was teeny, and I was like, and I just remember stopping and thinking,
Who was that?
what was that?
Jiminy Cricket?
And then it was like, and I stopped. I just paused and I listened. And it was like, I don't want this. I just need all of this to stop. This is, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to fight. I don't want to. And I was like, wow. And I remember this moment, because actually it made me feel really sad that I'd not listened to this voice. I remember this sensation. And then I remembered having, years before, having been in, the first ever time I went to counselling, and the lady in the counselling, who was the counsellor, had said to me, in the absence of anybody else being there, if you don't feel loved, you can give love to yourself. And I remember thinking, how? And that was the first moment someone taught me how to hug myself. And it was interesting, because at that moment I put my arms around myself. I literally put myself into like a hug, put my head down, and it allowed me to cry, because I realised that I was holding on to all of this stuff. And from that moment, things started to change. They really did start to change for me. So that little moment of just, listening to my own voice, that in essence was me starting to give myself some of that back. What is it for me? And then it really did build, because from that, I nourished my body. I enjoyed what I was eating. I started to move. So I
Out of joy.
Yeah, and to see these opportunities, because suddenly I see more opportunities around me, because that's well known. Fight or flight restricts your view. You don't
That's
see
exactly
things.
what we've just said.
Yeah,
isn't
exactly.
It? Shut down anything unnecessary.
Exactly. So suddenly I've got all of these options around me. I start to go, I go join a gym, which is something I would never have done at that point. I meet somebody quite incredible who was called Jackie, who then shows me how to run, and then how I started to pour into myself really started to take hold, because this is where I start to become more active, and the running was a way of pouring into me, because what I realise, and it's one of the things that I'm really back into now, and you said it to me the other day. You were like, here's the thing though, Mum, you choose the gym first. It's like, so the way that I've chosen to set my day up is so that I can go to the gym.
And that was where I was like, I don't think you're realising
that's
how you're embodying this.
Yeah, this is important to me, because I know what it does for me.
Yeah.
Because I feel relaxed, because I have the sense of accomplishment, because of mastering something new when I'm starting to lift heavier. I was on the hip thrust machine yesterday. And also because I begin to see the impact. So, so it's that. I'm noticing that when I've done sessions like that, my hips and my knee don't hurt, my joints, the menopause is almost counteracted, like the effects. So
yeah,
and what was fascinating for me was that, having poured into myself with the activity and feeling better with what I was eating, so my body felt nourished, because that was a big thing. I remember sitting in a car park in Asda. I don't know if I've ever told you this. And this was this moment for me, and I was sat, and it wasn't long after this whole realisation, sat in the car park in Asda in South Bank, up in the northeast of England, and in front of me were two great big billboards, and it was a billboard with a packet of crisps, and a person with a big packet of crisps pouring the crisps into them, yeah. And the next billboard next to it was obviously some government thing about eating healthily. The next image was a bottle of oil being poured.
I remember that billboard.
Right. That had a massive impact on me, because I just suddenly, and it wasn't like stop eating crisps, because I didn't particularly eat crisps.
No, because it was Walker's, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I was like, oh my word. But that was that visual was the thing that said to me, is what I'm putting in my body nourishing me? Is what I'm putting in my body giving me what I need? not having to be perfect, because this was the bigger thing for me as well, because that's where I've been a lot, was this perfection. I'm either on it or I'm not on it, and with in terms of, you know, what I'm eating, how I'm losing weight. There is the black and white thinking. That for me, I think, was the real start for me of the nuance.
Yeah.
And suddenly I started to realise I didn't have to be perfect, and I started to bring in all of these things. Bear in mind, the story then is, and we know it, is that I reached a point where I realised that even with the weight loss, even with the activity, none of that was changing what was going on in here or how I was feeling. You know, it's like I need more. So now I go do the counselling. Now I start with the 10, and again, I was just, you know, I was sat on my coffee table when thinking about it, when Beyonce's Crazy in Love came on, and I was like, I want a bit of that. First time I'd ever seen it, she blew my mind. And then how weird, well, how incredible is this?
Bit of fate.
A leaflet drops through the door. I get up, I go pick it up, and it's for the local college and for the university to be able to go and do what was at the time a 10-week counselling course that now I would say set me off on a different path. So it was almost like that pouring into myself was this, having these moments for me, you know, and being out, because the running, just to come back to the running for me, it was the achievement, but bigger than that, I got outside.
Yeah.
I got to be, like, I would run past by the sea. Like, I do miss that.
But also, you were doing that entirely for you.
For me, it was for me.
And I think that's something massively freeing when you've got 4 kids and it's that space where actually there's no way, because like for me, you know, when I go for a walk and then I always feel like I have to take my dogs.
Yeah.
Like that is just you.
Yeah, and I did have times, you know, because I don't know if you remember.
Was hard.
Yeah, because when you had holidays, because obviously when you were all at school, because you were all at school at that point, like you were like little, but still at school. So I would go drop you all off at school. I'd be already in my running gear, and then I would go. Like, and in that moment, it was like, I'll just go for 5 minutes and let's see how I feel. And then I ended up obviously going longer and longer. And then, of course, you hit the hurdle, the school holidays. Well, I wasn't prepared to leave you babysitting. Like, it wasn't fair at that point when I started. And I can remember being sat in my running stuff because I'd got ready and sat on the coffee table crying because I was like, I'm never going to be able to do it. I just want to be able to go because I'm really enjoying it. And I know what it's doing for me. And I do realise running's not for everybody. Please know that. You know, insert your physical activity or whatever it is. The thing is, I realise now that because what I was starting to do was listen to myself, and I was, you know, really aware of what was going on in my head. Here's the black and white thinking. If I can't go in the morning, I can't go at all. So what happened was I suddenly realised, and I thought, what am I doing? I knew my husband came in from work,
and
like your dad, and he sat to decompress, God love him, because that's what he needed. You know, I realised that. And then so he does that, and I was like, well, yes. So actually, when I went on holiday, when you guys were on holiday, I would run later.
Yeah.
So I found, but that's, again, I think it was because of this real going from what was this very black and white thinking and real critical thinking to suddenly, because I started to listen to this voice, and I don't know, now I look, it's really funny because when I look now, I really feel this sense that all this stuff that I'm doing now, I didn't know. If somebody had asked me what I was doing, I couldn't have told you. Somebody did ask me once, and I felt the shame of not being able to explain to them what I'd done and changed, because they were like, how come you've changed everything? How come you've, you know, you're not struggling, you're not going back into the old patterns? I could not have told you. Now I can. I can. Now I understand it. Now I understand what I did. You know, and the compassion and the love that I have for that all of these versions of me that, you know, just
survived what they needed.
And did what they did, and that version of me that just did what she felt was, she connected. I think that's what I did.
Yeah. All the time you were talking there, all I could think about was the fact that actually what started this was being able to hear your own voice. And I know that there was a very specific moment for me where I realised there was voices in my head. And I think, right, we've said before, like, some people don't, everybody has them. And I think that a lot of people aren't aware of them.
Sometimes people don't. I think, just to be aware, I've learned that some people don't have have a conversation a lot in their head.
I don't
And-
mean
but
that,
I think,
but I mean like they follow something.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
you know, like something starts their thoughts.
Oh,
Whether
yeah,
it's
yeah,
a
yeah.
physical
Yeah, yeah.
person in their head
Yeah,
or
yeah.
not. Like, I know that because like my husband doesn't have that.
Yeah.
But he's got these things.
Yeah, I have a client who was so happy when I said that because she was like, "I'm not mad," and I was like,
No.
"No,
No.
or
Like-
I am if that's the case."
Yeah, because I do have like there are physical. I can see them having conversations in my head, but my husband is completely opposite. What I mean is that everyone has these overarching things that cause certain thoughts and
It's the
things to
patterns,
happen.
yeah, yeah.
And all I could think about was the fact that. So I remember the first time we had this conversation. It was before I'd done any of this work, and I was sat on the floor in your living room in Nottingham, and it was the first time. And you were telling me about the judge. And it was the first, and I'd never been aware of. I always joked about the fact that being inside my head was like being at an AA meeting and everyone's trying to talk at the same time. Like I always kind of joked about that, but that was because what happened for me was my thoughts felt like a pinball machine. So I would have a thought, but then I'd automatically see it from a different perspective, but then I'd automatically see it from a different perspective, and I could never make decisions. I could never just do things for myself because I'd be like ping, 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 ping around these thoughts, and it felt exhausting and all this kind of thing. And I just thought that was the way I thought, and that was this thing. And I remember we had this conversation, and you told me about the judge, and I had this like visceral experience of hearing her for the first time. And it was this all of a sudden this experience, and ours are very different, right? Because yours like stands in front of you and it's mean and it's loud, and it was this realization that I have this voice that's tiny and sly and mean,
Contemptuous,
and
yours
she's
is.
and she has a sneer,
Mm.
and she talks, and she's she's so mean, and now I can laugh about it, but I remember the first time I realized she was saying things, and
I
it
remember
wasn't-
now. I can see
and
that
I was
day.
sat on the floor,
Yeah, I remember.
and I had this vision of her, and just this like I felt so small in that moment where I realized where she was there. But I think that what happens is that for a lot of us, we're unaware that these voices are all there and happening, and we become so used to talking to ourselves so meanly that we don't realize that it's not us. So for you, when you were having, and you sort of realized that there were all of these other voices, and then it was your little voice. But what happens is,
Interesting.
and it's the invitation that I would like to give people if they're sat there and going, oh, well, I don't have that. I would like to ask them how often they go for a walk without podcast or without music.
For have to have a
Or
purpose to.
Yeah,
do
how
things.
often do they do anything without something else in their head or brain? Like even when you're driving, like if you have to drive with music or you have to drive with podcast, because that's when I hear mine. Because I realised that she was so mean that I had to be busy to shut her the fuck up.
Oh, right. Hang on a sec. That's it.
Yeah.
How many people? Right. So we use lots of different ways to shut it up. We
Yeah.
use lots of different ways to not
Alcohol.
have to listen. Alcohol, drugs. If you think about all of this, this is why the opposite of addiction it isn't sobriety or whatever. It's connection.
Yeah.
Because and whether that's connection to it is connection to other people and
But
connection
also
to
to yourself.
ourselves.
Yeah.
And understanding and having that compassion for ourselves, and that's why we need to be more compassionate to people, because we use things to block it out, and people think it's drugs and food and yes it is, and it's shopping and it's scrolling, and it's never allowing our heads to stop, because
If
I've
the
got so
thought
many
of sitting
people
in a room with
quietly on your own.
with nothing to do, because this was I found it so uncomfortable. I used to not be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to sit in a room without my phone or without something on or without something to listen to or without something to do. I physically couldn't do it because I was, and I didn't even know at the time.
No, that's
I didn't even know, but it was this fear of hearing the thoughts in my head because they were so, like, she was so cruel, and she is still cruel, but it's great because now that I know she's not actually me, I can just be like, thanks, babe. She still makes me do this though. Like you can feel her. I can feel her. I can feel her. Like she's so nasty.
And I noticed what you said, that that whole little bit there about, because I said to you about my small voice, and you went, I felt so small.
Yeah, I felt so little.
And it's that, I think it's that moment, isn't it, that we begin to realise. Somebody once said to me about kind of how do you begin to notice, and it's that when you begin to realise you can hear the thoughts, or you get the sense, well, who's the person that's observing that in essence that's what is said, to be you.
Yeah.
You know, so this is the you, it's the small you, it's the me that realised me had a small voice. It's so this is where I begin to do this work to start kind of just understand her and what's going on and how come I've got this really big judge and, you know, who's doing all of this stuff. And
Yeah,
like
where
you
does
say,
it
it doesn't
come
go
from?
away because it's a
Like-
part of me, but my word, I can be the one driving the bus, not her.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah. So
Thanks
it's
for
that,
trying to
isn't it?
protect me. How about fuck off?
So that, I think sometimes, because I realised that we were talking about pouring into yourself and the friend and all these things that they were doing. I think that's where this can start, is what you're saying.
Because then you can hear that little part of
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I think that's it, isn't it? Because if you're in a position where you're like, I know I need to pour into myself. I know I do, because I know that this isn't feeling good. But if that judge, because if she was still in control and you said to me, well, how could you pour into myself? I wouldn't answer. She'd answer. Don't have fucking time to do that. But actually, it's not that. What she'd be like is, fuck off, you're not worth that anyway. You're not worth doing that. You're not worth spending 30 quid on paints.
Or
You're not worth...
literally, there's the bit about the paint, right? Because this is the bit, right? How else do we pour into each other?
Yeah.
I like to knit, right? But my so I call my judge Freddy Krueger, because that's what I envisaged, the stripy jumper than I used to, because it felt cutting. So Freddie comes out and goes, knitting's for old people. Yeah, granny. And I'm like, Freddie, but that's because I think about where I started with it. Whereas I'm like, oh my, some of the people that I admire online are the coolest. I'd like to be like you, please. And you knit. Think about Tom Daly.
I literally was like, what's his surname?
Yeah, Tom Daly. It's like, and that's the bit though, isn't it? It's like, that's where and now
But
I almost go,
if you weren't aware of him, you wouldn't even know that voice was talking, and therefore you'd never do the knitting.
How come you? Yeah, because I am excited. I knitted a hood, which I finished knitting when it got warm.
Yeah, you did.
Like, I've worn the first one, but I knitted a big red hood because I just had this vision, and it is a bit big. It is a bit big because I used 2 wools and the way I did it. And it's like, it's interesting, but I'm going to wear it as we get into the winter, because it's one of those ones that you put on and then you wrap around. But I'm really excited because I want to knit again now. So it's like I can feel it. This is knitting and dancing, because we used to jive. Do you remember when we went jiving? And I'm like, I need to do that. But do you know what? I
remember that little bald man. He was dead short, and he was just, oh my God, he was so good. Like, I was a beginner, and he made me move like I was made out of water. Like,
he was brilliant.
Whoa, he was so good.
Yeah,
I love that we both remember him.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and well, completely, because
he made me move my hips in ways I didn't even know I could do. I think I was like 15, like fucking dancing with this little bald man. Oh,
yeah, I remember having these little Mary Janes with just a little heel on that. I adored going dancing in. No, there were one. I had a nude pair, like a very neutrally cream pair, and I had a black pair as well. June, if you want to bring them back, I'd have them again. Thanks ever so much.
Just on this note, I had this vision for this podcast, right, where we were going to like list out all of these things that we've never done, because like I've never tried lobster and I'd love to try lobster. So like painting the clay. I'll tell you something else that's interesting actually about pouring into yourself is when you do something and you're not very good at it, and you've got to be able to catch the voice, right? Because on my hen do, my very belated hen do that we finally went on in the summer, my amazing family and friends took me on a pottery class, and I was shit at it, and I found that really hard. I found it really hard not to be very good at it, because I am good at everything, and I don't say that big-headedly. I'm just good at everything. Like, I will make myself good at everything, and I sat down, but I also realised something, right? Because right at the beginning, you were all listening to her instructions, and I couldn't. And this is where I'm starting to realise I need to go for the assessments, right? I couldn't listen to her instructions. Why couldn't I listen to her instructions? We didn't have aprons on.
Yeah.
So I knew she was giving us instructions, and I could, there was part of my brain was going, try and listen. No, you need to listen. But there was a bigger part of my brain, and it felt like a siren was going, everyone's going to ruin their clothes. No one's got an apron on. Is no one going to tell her that you've not got an apron on? You need aprons on. And by the time I could say to her, we don't have our aprons, the instructions were over.
Right.
I'd missed all of it. And then, but then I was like panicky, and I was like, I don't know. And I was like, I'm sure I can remember what she said. I'm sure I can remember what she said. And I can see that now. And it really makes me think about when I was a teacher and how many kids did I do that to? You know, and then like I didn't give them the instructions again. Anyway, that was just a bit of a segue, because I think it's the spiral thing, isn't it? This isn't about choosing to pour into yourself and all of a sudden becoming this person who knows how to do it all the time. Because, you know, there's still parts of me that of the perfectionist and the avoider and all that kind of stuff that I'm still working with. But it's just
I
interesting.
think that's where you can start to recognise where that happens more, though.
Yeah.
Because I think there is a bit of a thing that, you know, often we feel like we fail. Again, I mean, I know we've talked a lot about black and white thinking in a previous podcast, but I think it's that, because actually I think I just heard there was, I'm either really good at it, like straight away, or I'm shit.
No point. Yeah.
I'm this or the other. Can you see?
Which
and
makes
like,
no sense at all, because how often are people just good at stuff?
Yeah.
In fact,
So
Auntie Sam, if you ever listen to this, I was so fucking angry at you for being really good at it.
You just enjoyed it straight away.
Yeah, she was just really good at it. She was just having fun, and I was just sat there like,
I can't wait to get the pots back. And I don't know that I was the greatest at it, and I didn't. I think that's the difference.
Giant egg cup.
I didn't
What's
care.
the point in it?
It was like, because for me, it was about once I got into the feeling of it, and once I got, and I cocked up the first time. I did exactly what she said not to do, which was I made it too thin.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like
mine went.
Then
and I
the
loved
next
that.
one now, and I was like, so actually, I know we've talked about going back and doing it again, and I think that apart from nails,
but even
I'm not
this
sure my nails
though,
are very good.
even this moment to realise that there's nuances, because I didn't not enjoy it.
Yeah.
I loved it. I loved being there with all of my favourite humans.
Yeah.
And like experiencing this thing, and I loved the feeling of the clay.
Oh,
I wanted it on my face. I wanted it I did put it on my face.
I didn't kind of go there.
Oh no! Like the sensory
The
experience
sense,
of that for me, with it being so cold and that feeling, like I loved that, and I now need a clay bath. I don't know where I'm going to go for one, but I need one because I just loved it. But also to recognise that part of me that found it really hard because I wasn't very good at it. Anyway, so just time wise, I'm realising we're really good at that, just chatting our way. I would love to invite everyone who's listening to do something to pour into themselves that they've never tried before.
Yeah,
because that's what I would like to do. I'd like to find something I've never done before.
I reckon we should come back and talk about it on a podcast. I think we should go. I think that should be a challenge for both of us.
Yeah,
an invitation to go and try something new.
Yeah,
that we've not done, and then come back and talk about it.
I've got a little bit of an anxiety around that. My body immediately was like, "Oh, I don't know if I can do that. I don't want to try anything new." I can feel that.
Well
so
spotted.
We're going to listen to her, but also we're going to do it anyway.
Cool. So actually, I'd love to also know, what do you do to pour into yourself if already?
Yeah, so, share with us, because then maybe we can. Oh my gosh, no! I have a better idea. We're not going to choose them. You're going to choose them. Tell us what to do. Give us ideas. Come onto Instagram or send us messages or whatever. If you do something and you're like, this is a bit different, and you're like, maybe they've not tried this before, and the first person who tells us something that's
cost-effective is the only thing that I would say.
Yeah. Don't tell me to go skydiving because I can't afford that. But if you have something that you do to pour into yourself that you think they could probably try this, and you think that we might not have done, tell us and we'll try it and we'll film it, because I'm also that person, and then we'll come on and talk about it. I love it. Love filming it.
I've never been filmed doing stuff so much.
Everything is content. Everything is content. Don't say that in front of my sister. She'll kick off.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
Well,
I've loved that. Yeah, I think we went on a journey that we weren't expecting with some of that.
Lobster I can't get that out of my head. I'm going to try lobster.
I tried lobster in Cuba.
Is it
Best
nice?
thing. It was beautiful. In fact, I tried it again when I came home.
I can feel that. Can you see that in me?
It's lovely. It's so lovely.
We're going to try lobster.
My friend Julie, you're going to get a mention on this. Lovely, got me to try calamari and.
I love
all
calamari.
Of that. Actually, now I'm.
But
not.
only if it's crispy. It's got to be crispy calamari.
So yeah, it's what do you do to pour into yourself? How do you try these new things that make a difference?
Tell us so we can do it.
And maybe even consider, what are the clues to you that you feel empty?
That's a good question.
Mine. Just as an answer to that, for me, one of the biggest things was the lack of motivation. When I don't want to do anything, when I'm done, it is the lead in to burnout for me. Is when I've not met my own needs, I'm not thinking about me, because actually this might be something that gets people thinking. If you're at a point where you just feel, disconnected,
and
a lack of
all
motivation.
You can do is dissociate.
Yeah.
Constantly.
On that note, again, please remember there is help out there. There are helplines.
Yeah.
Please go speak to somebody if that's the point that you.
Yeah, if you're ever looking and you need to be signposted, do reach out, because I've got a bank of
links to
lots of different.
In fact, I think maybe can we put that in the show notes? This one.
Yes.
Some things.
Some mental health support links.
Just put in. Yeah, that'd be good.
Fabulous. Right, we love you. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.